You're watching HCAM TV.
Welcome to HCAM TV, and also welcome to the Friday edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'll be your host for the first half hour with, let's have Bob and Matt just stay with us. We'll be talking with Christian Navarro from Platinum Physical Fitness in the office located right here in Hopkinton. And then, which I should have remembered, in the second half hour, we have Jane and John on, who are going to be talking about master gardening. There's a master gardening program that Jane went to, and it was pretty interesting. So we're going to talk about that. So before I let Christian say hello, I've just got to say how excited I am to have him on the show. And the reason is because he is one of those people that went to our website and he filled out the form and he has said, yes, I'd like to share some information and some knowledge with our community. And I am just very grateful for that, Christian. So welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So you work at Platinum Physical Therapy, which is a physical therapy office.
Yep. So we're a PT clinic. We see a variety of different sports, orthopedic, post-operative conditions, anyone with your general aches and pains, anywhere from the high-level athlete to the young kid. We see a bit of everyone.
All right. Now, where did you come from and how did you pick this field?
So I actually am from next door. I'm from Ashland, Mass. I recently just moved back to Ashland actually as of last week, and ended up, I was an athlete growing up, got hurt, which tends to be the mantra of a lot of PTs. Ended up in physical therapy for a while myself, and I kind of fell in love with the field, just being able to help people get to do what they want to do. That's the biggest thing. So I went to UMass Lowell for both my undergraduate and my graduate studies. And my last clinical or my last internship was actually with Platinum. So I graduated from Lowell with my doctorate in 2019, and I just stayed on with them and continued on, and here I am now.
So UMass Lowell, is that what you said?
Yep, UMass Lowell.
I went to UMass Lowell back in the days when it was just you, Lowell.
Oh, okay. Was that the Chiefs? Is that, maybe, I don't remember.
The Chiefs.
Gone through a lot of changes. I don't even recognize it anymore.
Oh, I know. It is so different. And my son just graduated 2 years ago.
Wow.
Though I didn't graduate from Lowell. I started there.
Gotcha.
And my son just graduated from the physics department. And I went back there and wow, is it different. But one thing I will tell you, the club that I started back in the day when I was there is still there on campus. So that was exciting to see.
That's really cool.
But anyways, we're not here about me. We're here about you, Christian. So now, how did you end up at Platinum Physical Therapy?
So with physical therapy curriculums, you have to do required internships, or they call them clinical rotations. And my last or my third one ended up being with Platinum. I applied through our school. It was a 12-week rotation, and then at the end of it, they offered me a spot to stay, and I was more than welcome. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the workers, the people that come in. The community really is a really nice knit community, which I've learned to, love, type of thing. So it was an easy choice for me to stay on with them.
Oh, that's awesome. And I can't agree with you more. Hopkinton is just a cool place to live and to work.
Totally.
Now, I don't know this, so I'm asking this.
Yeah.
Do you specialize like other medical fields do? You have like a certain injury or part of the body, or do all of you as physical therapists kind of cover all aspects?
Yeah, totally. No, it's a very good question. It's something that as I'm, gaining experience in my own practice, starting to find what I tend to like. So as a clinic in Hopkinton, we see a lot of runners. Being on the marathon route has that perk and benefit as well. The Hopkinton Running Club as a community is really supportive. We're very well knit into the community, but myself, I kind of just trying to be a jack of all trades right now, trying to learn as much as possible, see as many different types of conditions, post-ops, surgeries, stuff like that. So I personally don't have it, but you can definitely branch out and find your little niche, which I think is the best part about PT. You can really focus yourself and find what you love to treat.
So Christian, is your practice open right now? Or are you closed down because of the coronavirus? Or are you only selective patients are coming
Yeah.
in?
Yeah, good question. So we are fully open now. We're accepting new patients for both in person, and what we were doing for a little while, we did shut down for in person sessions for about 6 or 8 weeks. We were doing telehealth, similar to what we're doing right now. We do video conferences with our patients where we can screen them through movements, give them an exercise plan, cue them and guide them through exercise as if we were in person. It's basically everything we would do without the hands-on portion, and it worked really well. We had definitely had a lot of really appreciative patients, and it was great that we didn't just make all this progress and then this virus hit, and then we just lost all of our progress. So we are still accepting in-person and telemedicine if for those who are not comfortable coming in, type of thing. We still offer the telehealth going forward.
And
And
so while doing telehealth, you even signed up for more to come on to
Yes,
our show.
yes, I did. Can't get away from the camera, I guess.
what
Now,
kind of equipment do you have in your facility in Hopkinton?
So in Hopkinton, we have, we have a squat rack, we have your standard dumbbells, weights, we have different like balance things to work on. We also have an Alter G treadmill, which is one of our kind of fancy devices. It's where you get hooked up into this air bubble and it can displace a percentage of your body weight, where it calibrates your weight. That can really help people both learning how to get back on their feet after surgeries, or it can really help with people doing high volumes of running that just need a little bit of a break, like of the wear and tear in their body. Um, so we have that treadmill, and then we also have different treatment tables. Um, we have people practicing dry needling. We have people practicing with instrument assisted, or we might know as Graston techniques. Yeah,
mm,
the basic things that a PT clinic would have in it.
yeah. Now, my my wife is also working from home during this
Mhm.
time, and it must be very different not
Oh yeah,
being able to feel the patient and feel the pain or the muscle knot or whatever that you would look for there.
yeah.
How has that changed how you approach your patients?
Yeah, totally. Especially with as we started the telemedicine, it was new for a lot of us, type of thing. Some of us had already done a little bit of it, but you learn different ways and different techniques. You do a lot of research, teaching people really how to take care of themselves, and that's our ultimate message with PT is to empower our patients to be able to, take care of themselves. We're just basically the guides on how to do that. Um, so now that we're back in person, we do, to people's comfort levels, use gloves, and we have our patients and PTs wearing masks. Our patients are screened before coming in for eligibility to even come in, just to make sure both, everyone else is pretty safe. But it has
Mm,
definitely been a learning curve, trying
yeah.
to treat in different ways with everything that's been going on.
Now, I wonder if you can address this.
Yeah.
Um, I know that there's always talk and there's stories about how doctors will prescribe medicine and
Hmm.
the patient starts to feel better, so they don't finish the course of antibiotics, and then it eventually leads to superbugs, but all that kind of stuff. Do you have the same issues with patients who you're assigning, movements to do to improve them, and then they go out and they start feeling a little bit better, so then they stop doing them, and now you got to
it's
pick up the pieces?
we know it all too well, definitely. Um, what I always tell the people as they're finishing up with me is, you're starting to feel really good, and there's a reason for that. You've put in a lot of hard work, so why not continue to do the thing that made you feel really good? Um, Usually, that's being the exercises and the adjustment of different maybe mechanics or issues or lifestyle changes that we've made um, that have contributed to the pain that they were having, type of thing. So sometimes people need someone else, like a husband or a wife or someone to like knock them and say, hey, remember, you got to do your stuff, type of thing. So I usually get accounts if I treat someone, then I treat someone they know. And they said, oh, yeah, they're still doing their stuff and they're doing well. So I know it all too well, definitely.
Right.
Is there a balance to the number of patients how do patients come to you? Are they by referral from other
Mhm.
doctors and hospitals? Do they walk in and say, oh, my leg hurts, I want physical therapy? How
Yeah,
does that
totally.
work?
So usually it all usually depends on the insurances that they have. Different insurances will require like a doctor's like or their primary care's referral type of thing. But we also in the state of Massachusetts, which is different state to state, have direct access, which is really cool. So if people want to forego their insurance type of thing, we have cash rates or cash pay where they don't necessarily need like a referral. They could, like you said, come in, walk in and say, hey, I've got pain. And then as PTs, we're trained to kind of screen out and say, all right, this symptoms don't really make sense to me. It doesn't sound like it's maybe muscular or something in nature. It sounds like something else. And we can refer out and say, I think you should actually go see a doctor or something like that. So that's a big part of our schooling and training.
I know that a lot of times in the medical field, when you ignore something, it doesn't get better. And in fact, it gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
My father had a situation with that when he was younger, when he had a back injury. And he started to feel better, thought he could go back to 100%. And he ended up flat on his back for twice as long the next
Mm-hmm.
time. What kind of guidance would you give to people who are, maybe they're like, well, I'm just starting to work out or just run. And when do I need to think about muscle soreness versus something I need to have taken a look at?
Yeah, totally. And that's a big question we get with people once they come in after it's gone past that point type of thing. What I like to tell people is once it starts to really impact your daily life where you like be like, oh, I fear putting a shirt on or putting my like bending over to put my socks and shoes on has become difficult for me, when it really starts to impact what we call your ADLs or like things you have to do in everyday life, and you have to almost change your lifestyle because of your pain. I think at that point it's safe to like just get addressed, and it's worth talking to a PT about. I think a lot of times people have maybe a lot of pride and ego comes into play where they're like, I've got pain. I can deal with it. Just ignore it until it's, too late where, like you said, they're doubled over. So I think that's on our part where we need to branch out as physical therapists and really market what we can do for everybody type of thing. Because it could just be that daily ache and pain that might take maybe a couple sessions or a couple just like investigative things where we can decide, oh, all you have to do is get new shoes, or I just said, oh, just don't pick up the box that way, something like that, or it's something more involved. It all just takes getting in the door.
Christian, you mentioned a few minutes ago your medical training. What's the usual level of schooling that someone in your field would normally have to go through?
Yeah, good question. So I think it was back in early 2000s, it changed from a master's to a doctorate level. So even those who are like older clinicians and stuff who have like got their bachelors, were grandfathered in, a lot of have gone back to school to get the clinical doctorate, or the DPT it's called now. But to graduate and to sit for your licensure exam, you need to get your doctorate, which is usually a 3 or 4 year graduate level study.
And how does that work? Do you have to work 80 hours a week during that, or have they fixed that issue and it's less?
As far as like during school, is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
yeah.
Yeah, so during school, you're full time with classes and stuff. At least each program's a little bit different. So at Lowell, I guess I can speak to, we would have a fall semester, a spring semester, and then a 10-week clinical rotation in the summer. We would come back for another fall and spring semester, another clinical rotation, a fall semester, a clinical rotation. So it was broken up between rotations and didactic material type of thing. So it was tough. I definitely didn't work as much. I was fortunate to be living at home and stuff, commuting, so I could save some money where I wasn't able to work. But I know people that were working full time. I don't know how they did it.
Right,
But,
you did it the
everyone's
smart way.
situation is a little different. Yeah, exactly.
As a professional physical therapist, is it more common to work in an independent practice, or do you usually get affiliated with a hospital or a larger organization?
Yeah, good question. So the field itself is going through different changes, just like any, I guess, other career type of thing. So you'll see some of these bigger chains start to maybe eat up some littler chains. So it all depends on your comfort level. What they preached to us as we searched for our first jobs as new grads was, you could go to an orthopedic clinic like I'm at, three on the same street, and they could all be run very differently. Like you said, it could be hospital run, it could be private, it could be a part of a strength and conditioning gym. Each one's a little different. So as PTs, whatever fits your, again, like niche, I think is the way to go about it as a PT type of thing.
And are you fun at parties where people say, "Oh, I just got this thing and I don't know about this. Could you look at that for me?" Or is that
I
something where
try
you would
definitely.
say, "You got to see me in the office"?
It's definitely started to come up at family parties, or they're like, "Oh, congrats on graduating. My shoulder is actually hurting a little bit nowadays." So I try my best to say, "Oh, like stick with what you're doing right now with maybe your current PT, or if you really need some help, like come see me in the office." Well, it depends on the person, how much I like you, maybe.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's always the case, right?
Of course, yeah.
All right. So you've seen patients, you've seen kind of like what goes wrong and what typically would need to be done to correct.
Hmm.
If you're talking to somebody who is not in a position or currently experiencing a problem that they need to have addressed,
Hmm.
do you have certain things that you would tell them? I know one.
Okay.
Um, Squat when you pick up a heavy box. Don't lift over to
Hmm.
protect your back.
Yeah.
Are there other things like that that are just kind of general rules that you would suggest people to look out for or do?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we've been preaching recently with everyone kind of working from home is like your posture. So like everyone at home now maybe is working at something that's not their office desk. It's not maybe as ergonomic, your posture is not as good, and you're sitting over the kitchen table a little bit like this now. So we've done a lot with our social media on Instagram, and mostly Instagram, giving just tidbits of information on different things you can do for stretches, strengthenings that are fairly safe for the everyday person to do, to kind of, again, get out of that slouched posture and like static position that everyone might be in because they're working from home now in such an unfamiliar territory or spot type of thing.
Christian,
1 second, Bob. That's really interesting one because I have noticed that sometimes I don't notice and I'm working and I'm editing video here and all of a sudden I'll feel like, whoa, I'm like this. I'm like
Yeah.
hunched over like crazy. And then I
Hmm.
like make myself sit back up and you can really feel the difference.
Yeah, no, totally. One of the biggest thing is just awareness. So we like to maybe tell people, set an alarm on your phone for every 30 minutes that just pops up, and you can just be like, all right, let me just shake it off.
Yeah.
Let me get my shoulders out of my ears. Let me just relax a little bit, or use a bright pink sticky note on your computer screen whenever you see it.
Yeah.
Just,
All right, Bob,
reset a little bit.
I'm going to let you talk next, Bob, but I have to finish up with this because
Hmm.
well, I'm thinking of it now. So now that I got you, Christian,
Yeah.
the thing that I am very worried about in life is I see that there are people that as they get older, their head comes more forward
Hmm.
and it looks kind of like, I mean, not so much a hunch, but just like their head's very forward.
Yeah.
So I have my car seat straight as a rail and I like always sit back and put my head back because I'm worried about that happening. Is
Hmm.
that just genetics? Is that if you're going to be that way, you're going to be that way, or is that something that you could combat?
Yeah, so it's something that, static posture is something that we definitely address. It's tough to always make the, X plus Y equals Z comparison, where if you have bad posture, you will have pain. They
Mm-hmm.
just tend to correlate rather than causate very well, type of thing. So if it's something that we can change, like you said, with little things like adjusting your seat or making sure your computer monitor is up at eye level instead of down really low, so you're not just doing this the whole time.
Yeah.
When you're using your phone, similarly, like you're not just looking down, but you actually maybe bring it up to eye level.
Mm-hmm.
Doing little changes like that can make a bit like bigger impact. A lot of little things instead of making one big change. A lot of little things add up to a bigger change,
So
I would
do
say.
you think there is a significant aspect of nurture versus just nature where you're born that way? You think that like you could definitely maybe
Yeah,
avoid something?
yeah, I know what you're saying. So there's definitely always changes that can be made. I would say even some people, everybody's spine, everybody's body, everyone's anatomy is a little bit different, but I think there's always room to be made for improvement maybe it's more for one person than the other, but there's always room for improvement type of thing.
Christian, what I had were two questions,
Sure.
probably. I'll phrase it this way, that for platinum, are there different levels of patients that will go to platinum? Is there a patient that you can't provide enough attention to, or the equipment doesn't match their needs and you'll have to refer them somewhere else? Or do you just take everybody?
Yeah, so we try our best. I mean, we're pretty well equipped to see most patients, I would say. Um, but that's definitely within the scope of a PT to recognize maybe, hey, I think like you're doing a good job, but eh, I think you could maybe just use a little bit more of what I just can't offer you right now. Um, haven't run into that just yet with Platinum, which again, I'm very thankful for and lucky that they have a lot of equipment that we can use. Um, but it definitely is something like, say, someone comes in, maybe this is just an example off the top of my head, because we do see a general, maybe neurological condition, maybe people that have had strokes or someone that has MS, maybe our clinic, because it's on the second floor, maybe just isn't, as accessible, or they can't get up on our tables. We could say, hey, these people over here have this clinic and they see a lot of people who maybe have had strokes type of thing. So knowing, what's around in your community is also super important, and to recognize and put your ego aside and say, hey, I can't offer this person the best care, so let me try to find that for them.
And the reason I asked the question, I'll be honest, I'm only a couple days older than Jim, but I do have a lot of older friends that have had problems with diabetes and have had to have, um, as delicate way to put it, had toes amputated, and
Oh yeah.
then they have to have physical therapy. Is that
Hmm.
some kind of therapy that Platinum offers?
Um, we don't maybe see it as often, but I mean, it is something that we could definitely address as far as balance issues, especially say after an amputation, stuff like that. Um, we see a pretty wide variety, and if it is something we could try for a session or two, see the logistics of it all, like see if the patient is comfortable getting in and out and comfortable with the clinic and their PT, um, and then kind of go from there. It is interesting. No, I did a rotation. So with PT school, you do both varieties, or a lot of varieties of different types. So I did a rotation at South Shore Hospital on a med surge floor, where I saw a lot of post-operative care with people who had had amputations and stuff like that. So I've worked with a lot of those different types of patients. So everyone gets a little bit of a mix and background
Mm.
before going into the professional field.
So losing a few toes would make you need to have physical therapy to be able to walk properly?
Maybe for one person, yes, and one person, no, type of thing. It all depends on everything else. Maybe their previous level of activity, if they were already maybe start trying to be as conservative with their management of maybe say diabetes, or someone that had no care and just it's come to that point type of thing. So their balance probably might have been bad before that incident type of thing. Um, Everyone kind of comes with different factors to them for sure.
Right. Now I know that certain professions have certain seasons
Hmm.
for things. For example, if you were an allergy doctor, oh, it's hay fever season.
Hmm.
If you were in an ER, there may be snowblower season, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
I'm wondering what kind, like, do you have seasons that you see certain
Yeah,
clusters of things?
I would say so, definitely. I mean, summertime sometimes tends to be a little slower because everyone's on vacation. Everyone's honestly feeling really good. The stress of work maybe isn't hitting as hard. Fall, usually the fall sports with high school hits, people start to play and train more than they were before, start to get injured. Winter, like you said, people slip and fall. Springtime, same thing. And then we're lucky again enough to be right near the marathon start. So we start to really see a increase in volume around that usually March, April type of season. Um,
Mm,
likely going to be later, more September this year, just unfortunately with the change. But
right.
yeah,
What do typical injuries look like during marathon season?
a lot of times it's people that maybe are training for their first marathon and have done too much or not enough, or it's something maybe that, like you said earlier on, just a little bit of ache and pain that they just ignored, and now it's become an issue maybe a couple weeks ahead, like of the race type of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but we've had a pretty good track record, and we have really great PTs with lots of experience, training runners that have gotten people to the start line, even coming in, pretty shortly. We recommend coming in way beforehand,
Yeah.
before it becomes crunch time. Like you said before, if you have a little ache, we do also free screenings, at PT, where we just have like a 20-minute conversation and we just go over their pain, and we can say, hey, try these things, maybe see if that helps. If not, let's come back and do a full evaluation and get you started on a case type of thing.
How, I don't know what the correct word is. I don't want to say heartbreaking, but
Yeah.
when somebody is like, when you see patients and you say, wow, and you say to yourself, I wish they came in a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they came in 2 weeks ago. What typically does that look like, and what does that do for their recovery?
Yeah, it just maybe changes expectations type of thing. And a lot of what we do is really education. So sometimes we have to be that bad guy and say, hey, like, maybe this season isn't like the right time to play. Like, we have to think bigger picture. Because we're at this point, let's take care of this now so you can have a future next season type of thing, instead of just trying to push through and then, risking re-injury or making it worse type of thing. The worst thing is to tell people to slow down, which I'm not really usually a proponent of. I'm rather, let's modify your activity, just change it up a little bit, rather than saying rest, do nothing, because that's also never usually good for people.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we got to play that bad guy.
Sure. Bob, you had something?
Well, yeah, I don't usually have caustic comments to make, but I was wondering if during your training, sometimes people can be kind of against doing their physical therapy. And if you have them in a session and you're asking them to raise their arm or stand
Mhm.
up straight, do they give you psychological training to go along with the PT so you can try and gradually get them into the um, idea
Yeah,
of
buying
doing
in.
this for their benefit?
Yeah, totally. That's a big piece of our schooling, actually, is just learning how to build rapport with someone. Because if you can't make your rapport with your patient, they're not going to trust you, and they're less likely to do what they need to do, even if it's the best thing for them. If they don't trust you, they have no reason to do it. So from day one, we always say, is building that rapport with that patient and instilling their confidence in you, is really the biggest thing, in my opinion.
And do you, in your practice, I don't know if you skew more towards athletes or more towards not, but do you
Mhm.
have a wide range of patients in age?
Yeah, definitely a wide range. I mean, I've seen people as young as under 10 to 90s type of thing. I've seen a little bit of everything, which again, I'm thankful for. Trying to just build my experience as I am entering the field. I had a background again in athletics and stuff, playing soccer and running track in high school. Played on the club soccer team at Lowell. So I love athletes myself, but I love, the middle-aged person with back pain just as much too. Everyone's got a little bit to offer.
Are you currently playing sports?
Well, I was going to join a men's league, and then this thing all hit. So
A men's league for soccer?
yeah, for soccer, I think it was through some Boston league, I guess, with some friends from the club team at Lowell. So
And what do you do before you exercise to prepare? Are you a proponent of stretches or some other thing?
yeah, at least some form of warming up, which I have learned as I've gone on, especially after college. I'll go back for an alumni game at soccer, and I've had instances where I don't stretch or I don't warm up and do some things like that, and I'm hurting for a week. And I was
Wow.
like, I used to, back in high school, be able to play 7 days straight and have no problem. And you hit 25 and something happens, apparently.
You know what? Get ready, because it's more than just that. One
Yeah,
day you're going to
exactly.
turn around and say, I used to be able to eat anything I wanted to, and now I can't.
Yeah, that's right.
And what about a cool down? What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, cool down is just as important as your warm up type of thing. You think about if you're going and you're going and you just stop all of a sudden, um, how like just detrimental that can be sometimes. Maybe some people can again get away with it
Hmm.
until they can't. Really, is what it is.
Okay. All right. Well, Christian, we have flown through this half hour. I want to thank you again for sharing your knowledge with us and our viewers.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And of course, again, if anyone needs it, we are open. We're accepting patients in person and telehealth at everyone's comfort level.
Okay. All right. You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
All right. We're going to be transferring over to our second half hour with John and Jane. And while I usher them in, we're going to throw it over to Matt for an HCAM update.
Absolutely. So obviously coming up tonight at 7 p.m. we have the amazing Cheryl Peralt, who's hosting the Friday night wake up hour. That's at 7 p.m. if I didn't mention that. On Sunday we have our combined Christian service. That's at 10:30 a.m. And coming up next week we have a lot of our normal hangout hours planned, including a returning visit from Eric Carty, and we're also going to have Tim Tagnacci, among many others, to join us. So it should be an exciting week.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
No
And
problem.
John, welcome and thank you for co-hosting this episode with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hi again, folks.
Hi, John.
Hi, Jane.
I demand a raise.
We'll put another zero on the end of that.
Another zero on the end of the zero.
There you go.
All right. I usually don't come out of the gate with this, but Jane, I do have an issue.
Uh-oh.
I cannot agree with the tag on your video that says just Jane. You are not just Jane.
Thank you. That's an old joke from college. When I was in school, in my dorm, we had so many Janes. We each got a nickname and I guess I'm lucky I only got that one for a nickname.
That's awesome. That's really funny. I love stories like that.
Well, I happen to know someone else that's named Jane, and I think that's a fine name.
Thank you. I agree.
All right. Well, the first thing we are going to do, oh, good. You know those pictures you sent me, Jane?
Yeah.
I have them here. So at the appropriate time, we'll share them.
Okay.
Okay. But first, we are going to be talking in this half hour about a Master Gardener program that our Jane McCloskey went through. And before we get into talking about the details, I'm curious in your gardening history.
Well, it's kind of limited, actually. We've done a few things around the house here. We did a few things around the house in Holliston, but nothing really big. And my gardening history, really, my grandmother was a gardener, and I had an uncle who had a little tiny plot of land in the backyard up at his house in Peabody, and he grew vegetables and fruit and plants like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we would go visit and we'd leave with bags of rhubarb and all sorts of zucchinis and tomatoes. So he was amazing. But no, we've just started around here really because we had a garden out in front that just kind of went to pot, so to speak. And we decided to try to do something with that. And we have a problem like most people do in Hopkinton and in a lot of places. We have a lot of rocks in underneath, and we have a lot of deer. So we had two things to tackle there: get rid of some of the rocks and plant put in deer-resistant plants. We have deer-resistant plants everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So thank God there's a good selection of those.
Jane,
Right.
you have to share the story of our Holliston garden.
Oh, no, that's sad. We tried a vegetable garden in Holliston and it was wonderful. We laid it out. We did all the right stuff with the soil and the compost and did everything, made little nice paths along the way. And I think one time I went out with a basket to get some of the beans and everything. I came back with one cherry tomato and probably 2 beans, and that was our crop. So we said, forget it. We're not doing anymore.
Oh, no. That is a sad
We
story.
gave up on that garden.
But that was a long time ago. And
Yeah.
now you're in a very different place.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Maybe I can interject my sad garden story.
Oh, gosh.
Years ago, we built raised beds on the side of the house. I planted a dozen tomato plants. Then we went on vacation. I came back. There were so many tomatoes everywhere. Half of them were rotten. We couldn't get them picked fast enough to get them out. That was the end of the garden.
Yep. Everybody has those stories for sure. We have better luck with tomato plants on the deck in the pots. We did pretty well last year with those, so we might stick to that, I think, for this year too. It's easier.
Now, how do they grow up, or I've heard that they can grow down too?
They can do, you can do both ways. I mean, we have pots and we have the stakes that we put in to hold them as they grow. So, you know, we don't grow the big ones really. We do mostly the smaller ones, the Roma ones and the cherry tomatoes. So
I see. Now, are you the lone gardener, or is John a help?
no, John's a big help. He really is. And he didn't even pay me to say that. Uh,
So,
he's
John.
great. He and John did the digging. He and Andy did the digging of the rocks.
yeah.
So that was wonderful.
So I will say that I'm a great help at my house too. When we bought this house, the guy who lived here before had all kind of plants, and I said, "Listen, I will do some work, but I am not going to tend plants." It's always frustrating for me to pick weeds because they all look like weeds to me,
Yeah.
and then everybody gets mad at me because I'm pulling out plants, but they look like weeds to me.
Oh, yeah.
So, John, are you an enthusiastic helper, or are you backing up what Jane likes to do?
Um, I consider myself technical support sometimes, but you know, as Jane said, I get out there and I you know, especially for this big garden project we did this year, I was in charge of pulling out all the old plants, tilling the soil, pulling out all the rocks, um, getting new topsoil in on top of it, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I do have a raised bed that we put in a couple of years ago that it's sort of our experimental garden. I try sort of different things every year in there to see what grows, and inevitably nothing grows, and they wind up on, you know, the tomatoes wind up on the back porch. So this year I'm going really old school and trying. I think it's known as the Three Sisters, which is the old Native American thing of a mound with corn, squash, and beans. And the idea is the corn grows up and the beans climb up the corn stalk, and then the squash covers the ground and keeps the weeds out. And there's something with nitrogen fixing and all that that supposedly goes on. So I'm anticipating yet another year of failure with that one too, but it'll be fun to try it and see how it comes out.
All right.
So
well,
that makes a
sounds
big
really-
pile of compost for you.
All right, that sounds really good. And now let us turn to the master gardener. And can you tell us about the program that you found and a little bit about it?
Yeah. A friend of mine that used to work at the same company that John and I did for years, she retired, and I happened to run into her, and she mentioned that she was taking this Master Gardener program, which I had never heard about. And she said, "Oh, you should try it next year." So I looked into it and I said, "Yeah, that sounds kind of interesting." And it was held at Elm Bank in Wellesley, where the Mass Horticultural Society is located. And it was a very humbling experience to go back to school, shall we say. And it was quite challenging, and I'm trying not to laugh because we had a great group of people in the course. That was about 30 to 40 people in the class, and it was only one day a week, every Thursday. In spring, they had a spring session and a fall session. And then the summer months, you were supposed to do all of your gardening, volunteer gardening, and get your hours in for that you needed for graduation and such. But each class was on a particular topic of interest to any gardener, whether you were a vegetable gardener or plants or shrubs or trees. So they covered all of those areas in the classes, and they were pretty intense. And we had but they were great. I really learned so much. And I think the hard part for me was getting back into a classroom setting and having to take notes. Again,
Oh,
I lost that skill, but boy, I quickly got it back.
I just remembered you came home after probably the first session and you were almost in tears. You said, "They gave us homework and there's going to be a midterm."
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We had homework every week, and we had a midterm and a final exam, and you basically had to pass in order to graduate. So it covered everything.
wow.
Yeah.
Before we get into some of the details of some of the things that you learned, do you want to talk a little bit about those pictures that you sent me of that
Oh, do you have them?
celebrity sighting?
They're pretty exciting. Do you have them ready to go? Okay. Oh, yeah, we had Roger Swain. If I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember his show, The Victory Garden on PBS, and he was our instructor for vegetables. And that's basically the setup there. Every instructor that we had brought something that they work in, whether it was dirt, mulch, compost. He brought all sorts of vegetables in various stages of growth and seeds. And yeah, he was a hoot in the class, that's for sure. But it was kind of fun seeing him, having him as a teacher.
So he clearly he was on Victory Garden, and
Yeah.
he brought in vegetables in different states of growth.
Yep.
Did he talk about what his garden looks like now and what he's doing?
He works in so many places, and he's up in New Hampshire a lot and such. So he's kind of he's very active. He's all over the place, and I think he'll go anywhere to talk about vegetables and to grow vegetables and help people. So.
Okay. So that was cool. That was a celebrity sighting of the day. Now, the name of the program that you took is the Massachusetts Master Gardener Association program?
Yeah, MMGA. Yeah.
MMGA. Tell us a little bit about what its mission is.
It's basically 2 points: to educate people who are interested in learning more about horticulture. And it's also, its goal is to promote outreach programs to educate others in the community. It's a big community-based organization. They want to get out there to schools and help kids. There's a lot of that going on at various grammar schools. They're growing their own gardens, so they're learning from that. There's also a lot of farm work where they go out and they bring kids in to the farm to do various activities and have their little plant areas and such. So it's basically learning and community activities.
Okay. Now, so okay, John.
So Jane, you mentioned the weekly classes. In addition to those, you also had to put in a certain number of hours in other things.
Right. You had to have at least a minimum of 60 hours of a variety of volunteer work to graduate, in addition to the homework and the exams and everything. And the 60 hours, they basically broke it down into so many hours of continuing ed classes, so many hours of active gardening, so many hours of volunteer outreach programs, and that type of thing. So most of us did do a lot more than the 60 hours, especially in the summer months. We just got out there and went anywhere and everywhere we could to get some gardening time. And
what were some of the things you did?
I went to Medway Community Farm. I worked there a lot, and that was probably 2 hours a week. I also went to a number of historical sites and worked their gardens. I did, they have a lot of veterans gardens that they're working on. So you can go there and work for a few hours and get your time there.
So you were in Ashland?
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Ashland Historical Society, they're a great group of people over there. So we work in their gardens in the back.
The Marshfield Fair?
Yeah, the Marshfield Fair, that was interesting. They do Ask a Master Gardener booths at different fairs and outreach booths. We went to the Holliston Historical Society Fair, and we did a Ask a Master Gardener booth there. So it's basically, you can come, and if you have a question about a plant or soil or whatever, you can ask the Master Gardener person for their advice and input. And they can do a lot of them do soil testing for you as well. So that's kind of a nice thing to have.
Had you had an opportunity to go to the flower show in Boston at any time before? I know Mass Hort was deeply involved in that for a long time.
Yeah, no, I used to go to that a lot with my mother, and but I haven't gone to the new site wherever they are. And this year, I had signed up to volunteer, but it was canceled because of the coronavirus. So, yeah, a lot of things were unfortunately we didn't get to do, but that was one of them. I was looking forward to that. I have fond memories of that from years ago.
And we also visited, they were visit a master gardener.
Oh yeah, you can. A lot of the senior master gardeners, they have different levels there, and a lot of them are lifetime, and they allow you to come and visit their gardens, and you get hours for that, so to speak. And it's beautiful because you get to see a lot of different types of gardens, fruit gardens, vegetable gardens, trees and shrubs in different landscapes, and it's just some of them are gorgeous. As John knows, I take pictures wherever I go, and I come home and I download the 50 pictures that I took of this one garden. But they're all different city gardens, out in the country gardens, so you get a good perspective.
Now, could you describe a little bit about? I'm not sure if the Master Gardener program is flowers or vegetables or both. And could you also describe some of the activities that you did during the classes?
Yeah, it's for everything. As I said, you can work on farms. You can work on. They have a huge, at the Elm Bank, project garden that basically all of the produce that they get from it goes to food banks. So there's a lot of that at various farms and locations too. They're big on supplying food where and when it's needed. So that's nice too. For trees and shrubs, you can go to a lot of the historical places and work there, and you can learn how to properly prune trees and shrubs, which is always a challenge. But mostly I was interested in the flowers, plants, the perennials and the annuals. And if and when Elm Bank is open again, I encourage people, especially with children, to go to the Elm Bank because they have a children's garden there, which is wonderful. They have a gazebo, they have this tower that's made out of wood, and it's just a lovely place to go and sit and stroll around through the garden.
And how many bulbs did you plant there?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, one of the gardens that they have at the Elm Bank is called the Italianate Garden, and it's gorgeous. It's one of those with the huge fountain in the center and the rows, and it goes up to the old mansion. And one weekend we planted about 1,200 bulbs there, and that was actually one of my last projects that I did in last fall. And yeah, it was fun. We were out there. It was a little cold, a little windy, but we were all out there. We were troopers. So I haven't been back to see what it looks like, unfortunately, but hopefully I can get to see it before it changes.
And
Do they still have, oh, sorry, John.
I was just going to say, Master Gardener in Massachusetts is from Mass Horticultural, but it's a nationwide program with various.
Yeah, I didn't know when I first started, but it originally started in Seattle, Washington, and then it made its way across the continent. And there are branches of it everywhere. In fact, most of the people that we had as instructors in the course were from universities all over New England and New York, and down to New Jersey and such. So, and they were all part of Master Gardener people in conjunction with their universities too. So they were experts. We had a symposium last fall, which I'm not sure if we're going to be able to have it again this fall, but hopefully we will. But they had 4 presenters come, and one of them was from England, one of them was from the Netherlands, one of them was from Canada, and another one was local. So they had really amazing speakers come to the symposium and talk about their projects and what they've been involved in, and we all left with little sample bags of bulbs and things, so that was fun.
I was going to ask earlier, they used to have, you mentioned the gardens at Elm Bank. They used to have weddings at Elm Bank that people would come and have their pictures taken in there. They still do that?
Yep, they still do that. I don't know what they're doing right now, but yeah, in fact, last year I was working at a children's day session on the weekend, and we had wedding parties going through, having their pictures taken as we were sitting there. And yeah, they do a lot of weddings there.
Mm.
It's a beautiful. The grounds are beautiful for it.
All right. Well, getting back to the program, I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about what the requirements are for the Master Gardeners program?
Yep, you have to, as I said, a minimum of 60 hours of volunteer work, and that included gardening, outreach, administrative type work, and that means attending meetings, continuing ed learnings. Right now we're not able to go to a classroom setting as a continuing ed, but we're doing a lot of continuing eds via Zoom, which is fun. And I sat in on a couple that were being done from England the other day, which was kind of fun. And also they have at the Mass Fort, we volunteered for their helpline. So if you want to call up and ask a question of a master gardener, you can call the helpline, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. But it's usually manned by at least 2 people, so that's nice.
And how is England in comparison to us? Are they roughly equivalent as far as season goes?
Yeah, they are. And the places, of course, I'm driving John crazy because I'm like, okay, when we go to England, we're going to go to these gardens, okay? And some of them are beautiful. And there's a beautiful garden in the Netherlands too, which is some place I would love to go. It's close to Amsterdam, so there's a plus there.
Mm-hmm. What did you find particularly challenging going through this program?
The homework. I really did. I mean, ask John. I mean, I would go up and disappear into the room, one of the rooms upstairs, for hours, and he'd knock on the door quietly and say, "Are you coming down for dinner?" Like, oh yeah. But yeah, the homework I found challenging, and then I finally got the hang of it, and it became a little easier. It was comprehensive, say that, but you learn a lot.
So that's you learn a lot. What was your most favorite thing to learn?
It's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, though. But I really liked knowing more about soil, and we had our soil tested here, and we had a woman from the University of Connecticut come and talk to us about soil testing. So when it was time for us to have our soil tested, we took it down to her, and it was great. So we found out we had really bad soil.
Doesn't everybody?
Oh yeah. And that's the first thing I tell people: get your soil tested if you have any questions. But and just landscaping. We had people come in and talk about landscaping and the importance of knowing your terrain and knowing the plants that work best in the different environments. Wet soil, dry soil, sun, shade, and all of that. I was interested in those types of things. So a lot of the people that in the class were landscape people. They were working or starting in their landscape design companies. So that's why they were taking the classes too, to learn more about that. And I think a lot of people took the classes to leave and start their own business. So I think there's a lot of that going around. And it was fun because the people in the class, the students, were from all over: North Shore, South Shore, the Cape, Western Mass. It was quite a mix of localities, so that was kind of nice too.
Was there anything about the class that you would, if someone was asking you if they should take the class or not, is there anything you would say, if you don't like doing this, then don't take the class? Now, I know you were intimidated a little bit by the homework that they gave initially, but you got over that.
Yeah, I think if you don't, certainly if you don't like getting dirty, I would say maybe it's not for you, because you're out there in the environment regardless of what it's like, and you're working. And I'm a mosquito magnet and a bug magnet, so that was another thing. I was totally slathered all the time. But no, other than that, I can't think of anything. I mean, you have to go into it with realistic attitude, and the homework, yes, was intimidating, but you get over it. And they're very supportive. The whole training team was extremely supportive. they would help you. They were there if you had any questions. If you weren't doing so well, they would see if they could help you out to move forward. So you had that support there, which was great.
I had to laugh a little bit because one of the side effects of Jane taking the class, and according to her, it happened, the same thing was she heard from all the other participants. The participants' gardens got no attention at all last year because they were all in class the whole time. So their gardens were completely ignored.
Well, if there's, I mean, if there's one advantage, I guess, or positive thing we could take out of this isolation time, all of the Master Gardener people are busy in their own gardens, and they're bringing life back to their own gardens. And yeah, pretty much you don't have time. And when you come home from working at a farm garden or something after a few hours, the last thing you want to do is go out in your own garden and do anything. So, but yeah, everybody's having fun being out in their own gardens this year.
Could you give us an overview of some of the topics of the things that you learn? I'm not sure. Do you cover design of gardens, or you talked a little bit about soil? Like, what are some of the items that you learn?
Yeah, we did a lot of, it was scientific based, so plant pathology, botany. And I remember after the botany class, the women that I was sitting with, we all just looked at each other and said, oh my God. But the teacher was great. She said, you've had one day of botany. You are not botanists. We were like, okay, thanks. We needed that. But talked a lot about turf and lawns and landscaping, the soil part, entomology. We talked about plant diseases, pests, bugs. Yeah, the guy who was the pests and bug guy was interesting. He brought in a lot of dead bugs. He was like, come on up and look at them. And we're like, no, it's okay. We'll see it from here. But yeah, just and house plants, believe it or not. There was a topic. In fact, the gentleman who taught the house plants class was the original president of the Master Gardeners in Massachusetts, and he lives around the corner from us. He recently moved from out in the western part of Mass. So we touched upon all of those topics. Tree pruning, shrubs, shade gardens, big on the vegetables and such. So pretty much touch on anything that the communities might be interested in and the schools might be interested for the kids.
You talked about, oops, that thing just turned on. You talked about getting your soil tested and finding out that you didn't have the greatest soil, which nobody does. Could you tell me a little bit, the only thing I know about soil is acidic or not. Yeah. Are there any other dimensions, or is it usually just that?
Yeah, it's just the pH levels. You make sure you have the appropriate pH level for your soil. And it's a real simple, you can buy a test at Lowe's or Home Depot or something, any place like that, and just put a little bit of your soil in. And it can be, your soil test results can be different for different areas in your yard too. Ours was pretty much a mess all over, so we had, that to deal with. But yeah, your pH levels and, is your soil, when was the last time your soil was treated with nutrients? Drainage is an important thing too, for your gardens. So that's all part of it. Soil is a big part. It's a starting place.
All right, Bob, we got 1 minute, so give a short one.
Well, I wanted to know about invasive plants in Massachusetts. There's some plants that have been growing here for years, but they take over and they came from somewhere else. Did they cover any of that in the class?
30 seconds, Jane. Go.
Yes, they did.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any help? Is there any hope for us? Because everywhere I look, it's invasive plants.
The horticulturists are very active in making you aware of native plants, the importance of native plants, and the invasive plants. And there's a lot. There's a lot online. If you want to Google anything, use look for sites that end in .edu or .org. Those are the educational ones, and that's a lot.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And John, last question for you. Do you need to refer to her as Master Gardener when you're out in the yard now?
Yes, and I usually have to bow.
No way. No way.
All right. Hey, thank you both for taking the time and sharing it. That's a really interesting program.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. And thank you for watching this hour of the Hangout Hour. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.